We're just hours away at this point from a potential strike. Some of the nation's biggest ports. This could be a really big story, big economic story, maybe even a big political story. We'll talk about how it affects the supply chain when we come back.
Sharon saved her supply chain from cyber risk and ended the office goat debate.
This is big. Let's talk to Brandon Daniels a little bit about this, the CEO of the firm Exiger, which deals in supply chains. And, you know, maybe this is a shock to that system that has a political impact. How big of a deal is this, I guess, essentially would be my first question.
Well, Connell, thank you for having me on. It's good to see you again. This is a really big deal, and it is a recent episode in a series of shocks, right? And so this is compounding on an already exhausted supply chain. After the issues in the Suez Canal, after the issues in the Red Sea, after the issues that have just occurred over the last, 6-9 months, this is an increasingly problematic and strained supply chain. But there are also downstream impacts, Connell. So first, just before they were saying the auto industry is impacted, but so and much more significantly, so is the oil industry, so is the energy industry. That is by far the largest commodity coming through these ports. Also, the pharmaceutical industry is impacted, but it's a small amount of the total imports that are actually coming through these ports. One of the interesting things that we've seen, though, is that in about June, we saw the shipment volumes coming through these ports drop precipitously. And they dropped almost exactly with the contract negotiations going into a stalemate. And so clearly shippers have already started to reroute these shipments into different ports. However, what that's going to do is that's going to create greater port congestion. So you're going to see greater port backlogs, longer port lead times, and that's exactly what we saw in COVID. And so if this goes for multiple days or multiple weeks, just do this math. For every 1 day of backlog, or for every 1 day of the strike, you will have 5 days of backlog. So just multiply that 5 billion by every day times 5, and that's the true impact of this. And so this could be tens, hundreds of billions of dollars of potential loss. The final thing is, Connell, this is going to impact our disaster relief. Helene just tore through the middle of America. And one of the big things that's going to get disrupted here are agricultural foodstuffs that are coming through and being imported that are supposed to be reaching, survivors of Helene. It's the medical supplies that are supposed to be reaching the workers that are going out and helping these folks that have been displaced by Helene. So there's a huge impact here.
So it's avoid this at all costs, it sounds like, from your point of view, and you have, as you look at where the impact would be in these 14 ports, but more importantly, avoid it for more than a day or two, right? I'm sure the economy, we don't want it for a day or two, but that sounds like we could withstand that.
We could withstand that, although it does start to impact the outreach efforts in Helene. You could afford that from an economic perspective. You could absorb it. If this thing, gets dragged out, if the, administration doesn't intervene, or if they're just not able to come to an agreement, this could be really traumatic on an economic level and a humanitarian level.
Quick thought on the economy, broad thought on the economy, then we'll give the closing numbers, stay on Wall Street in a minute. Jay Powell, the Fed chairman, today said it's in solid shape, meaning the economy's in solid shape and more interest rate cuts are coming. He said, he led us to believe. What would you say as a CEO of a company? How do you describe the economy right now, our economy?
I would say most CEOs feel like we're in a limbo state. The economy is it feels like there's not as much growth as there once was. It feels like you've got an incredible amount of wage pressure, and it does feel like the cost of capital is still really high. The only place that you're really seeing advantage to this current economic situation is if you have a ton of cash, if you're independently wealthy, because then you've got interest rates coming down, or you have interest rates kind of staying up right now, but you have inflation coming down and you're getting to sort of earn off the delta. And so I think people with cash are in a good place, but people looking to invest cash and looking to put capital out, there's still a lot of trepidation
Yeah,
there.
they're
You
the
have
ones in limbo. Yep.
2.9 trillion of private capital still sitting on the sidelines, Connell, that is still very hesitant to come off the bench.
Brandon, thank you as always. Brandon Daniels on all of that.